us when he comes.
Cue the marimba music. There we are, the very soothed music. Welcome to the OEWeek Live Studio. I'm Alan Levine from OE Global. I'm very excited to bring together a bunch of really super creative folks that I hope to get out of the way of and shut up so they can talk about storytelling. And so pleased to have a return to a project that we've been following for a long time and to hear what's new in development. But I'm going to turn it over to my good colleague and friend, Chris Nuranci, to start the intros and tell us what we're doing today. And Gino is here.
Thank you so much. Gino's here? Oh, there he is. Hi, Gino. Hello, everybody. And thank you so much, Alan, for inviting us to share our journey about together. My name is Chris Nuranci. I'm from the University of Leeds in the School of Education there, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves first before we talk a little bit about the project we have been doing. And we can start with Paula.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Alan, for having us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Open Education Week to anyone. I'm Paola Corti. I'm based in Italy, and I've been lucky enough to be called upon from Chrissy during COVID to work on this fun and creative project. She was the greatest leader you could have in something creative to do online at a distance, across time zones, regions, with all these people that you see in the room. And I will leave it on to Gino. Welcome, Gino.
Ciao, Paola. Can you hear
me? Yes.
So just so that you know, I don't see any.
Oh, no.
We see you.
We see you, yeah.
It might
Elegant,
be the internet.
As always.
Yeah. Yes. We're imagining his voices. If it helps, you might turn off the camera because I bet network connectivity might be at play here.
Try that, Gino.
And maybe someone else can take over so that Gino has the time to come back.
And that was very rude of the internet to do that to Gino. I apologize.
Yeah.
While he was talking, yes. Not ideal. Verena, would you like to go next?
Okay, I'll jump in. I'm Verena Roberts. Thank you, Chrissy and Alan and everyone else. Welcome. I'm coming in from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where there's a lot of snow. And I agree, in retrospect, what a wonderful opportunity we had during COVID to be creative, because you can't have enough creativity in the world, as I've certainly learned after COVID. So I'm excited to talk about what's transpired since then.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Should we go to Udi?
I guess so. Hello, I'm Odie Frank, currently in Norwich, in England, and I had the great opportunity to be one of the main designers for the Together project, working collaboratively with everyone, and it was a really great experience.
Great. Thank you so much. Stephanie?
Well, I'm the newcomer to this group. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Chrissy, especially for inviting me to be a part of this. My name is Stephanie Gottwald. I'm the co-founder and vice president of content at Curious Learning. And I hope through the course of today's discussion, I'll tell you a little bit more about what Curious Learning is and what we do, and how excited we are to take the story together to another level and try to get it out to as many kids as possible, and explain a bit more about how we envision stories, the role of stories like Together as an absolutely essential part of helping kids become literate and participate in storytelling in their own communities.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. We are delighted that you joined us, and we are able to take the story further, to let it travel further, to reach wider audiences, especially those who will need it. I don't know if Gino is back.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So
Not yet.
we'll just interrupt, but let's start with the Together story, because I love that story.
So like colleague said already, we came together in 2020 thanks to GoGN. We got a collaborative fellowship and some funding to work on the project that was approved. So we worked across countries, continents, cultures, during very difficult times, but I think the idea that we would be doing something creative helped us, I think, get through these challenging times that all of us globally were faced. Now, there are a few colleagues missing from today's call here, and I think we would need to say hello to Helen Pulka and Penny Bentley, but also Thanasis Frank, who were also part of the team, and a big thank you to GoGN, who enabled that project actually to happen. And thank you also to OE Global, who has generously supported us and promoted our work for some years now. So the project came to life in 2020, and we completed actually the story that we called Together after 6 months. So it didn't take us long, and the story is quite tiny when we think about words, word counts, but it has loads of pictures and deep meanings. And we're also very grateful to the wider community, because we did reach out very early on and made known that we want input from the wider open education community to what it means, what is the value of open education. So the whole book is about the value of coming together, sharing, and creating a better world. And I think that's why we called it in the end Together, because we see that as the way forward. But I'll hand over to Paula, maybe, for something she would like to share.
Well, actually, today's it's one of those peculiar days when things and memories click in your mind. And Alan knows, because I shared something with him early on today. And now that I think about Together and that bucket that we used to build a story around, and people refusing to share water with the team of animals that were trying to advance together, and that at a certain point they are helping each other, surviving together with the others also, and saving their lives somehow when the waters became dangerous. It's something that today made me think about some of the experiences that I've been having in the last 4 years with our Ukrainian librarians. The war is still ongoing there, but the open education community actually, and I'm going to share a message from Tetiana Kolesnikova from Uzust University on OE Global Connect later on today, because she really sent me this perfect email today expressing her gratitude despite the extremely challenging situation they are in, having the community, the open education community around. It's really meaningful for them to think that they are not alone. They are not fighting alone to survive and to within every struggle they have. And they really feel like this community effort is keeping them alive somehow, emotionally speaking. So it's really meaningful in this time. And I think that it's a perfect real life example in challenging times of the values that we tried to convey through the story.
That's great, Paula. Yes, it's very much about the values of coming together and what we can achieve together is, and how we can overcome barriers and challenges. What about you, Verena?
Well, as I tear up listening to Paula's story, I definitely think about how I've used the story, and specifically it was when we used the museum resources, and how I was able to teach the students that you're never, I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, open educational resources many times in Creative Commons licensed content, but to be able to use resources, play with them, and be creative and never feel like you're stuck. And I think that gave them, it's not quite as well connected as supporting Ukrainian librarians and educators across the world. But I think it's still, it's that unstuckness. I don't even know, that's not even a word, but it's to provide the opportunity to not feel alone, like you're saying, and to be able to go and find the resources and the opportunities and the creativity in spaces when you might feel alone. Yeah, so I think that like teachers in a classroom often feel alone if they can't find what they need or do what they need. So even something as simple as knowing how, that's what the story, well, because I pulled apart the story to show how we made it. So that's how we learned a little bit more in our classroom, why it's important to create the story the way we did, using the digital tools and open educational resources and museum art that we did.
Yes, and what you said there about repurposing, isn't it? Open educational resources from the Rijksmuseum. This is what we did then. And often we hear, people are releasing OER, but nobody's using them. So we wanted to challenge this and actually create something where we are repurposing. And that's what we did, isn't it, Odie?
Yeah, so we had this really cool opportunity to repurpose and remix the resources that are all available for free through the Rijksmuseum. And I think it was a really cool challenge almost, just to see how many different pieces we could use and how you could use them in novel ways throughout the designs of the different elements of the book. And I think it also shows it shows this cool message as well, especially in the modern age, the current day, where even things like where like AI is a big thing potentially, where this idea that we can look to things that do exist and that are openly accessible for everyone to use and collaborate on. I think it's really cool to keep that in mind and be able to look back at things and learn how to sort of reframe the state of mind and get back into this remix culture of sort of reusing things.
That's really good. It's also a more sustainable way, isn't it? And sustainability is something that I think we all see part of what open education is about, but it may be not often highlighted as a connecting sort of dimension of sustainability. So I think we have, yes, Gino is here. Please, Gino, would you like to introduce yourself?
Ciao, Chrissy. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Gino from Nelson Mandela University in Kaapstad in South Africa. And yeah, I find this fascinating. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm happy to engage and contribute as I can.
Thank you so much. I mean, Gino did amazing. We translated the story in so many languages present and spoken in Africa, isn't it, Gino? So the initiatives you led then, I don't know, is this still going? I'm sure it is.
So this I literally sent this group a message, and there's no shaming or email shaming, but I sent this group a message and I said, oh, if you want to do more, let's do more, and I have an idea. So if anyone's listening, yeah, let's join in the idea and think about how we can make other versions or stories or languages or translations or purposes of this book.
Thank you, Gino. And that takes us really nicely, isn't it, to Stephanie? Because I noticed something online. I think it came from Curious Learning. Somebody in my network reposted it. And then I became curious to find out more about Curious Learning. And it didn't stop there. I actually got in touch and Stephanie picked up that message that I left on your website. So would you like to tell us a little bit about what maybe Curious Learning is doing and how we connected?
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, it was just as simple as Chrissy pointed out. She left a message on our website and it popped up in my email. And I said, ooh, this is interesting. I want to know more about this community that's creating resources that's available to anybody to use free of charge. And that fits in so well with our mission as well as with our values as an organization. So just to tell you a little bit about Curious Learning, we began about 14 years ago at this point. I was at Tufts University and we were collaborating on a project with other colleagues at Georgia State University and in Ethiopia and at MIT. And, you know, we all had been in the field of studying how children learn to read and how to help children who are struggling to learn to read for a very long time. And you know, we were curious about the potential of using technology to reach kids who would otherwise not become readers, not become learners. And, you know, along that process, I happened to meet my now colleague, Tinsley Gallion, who has a history of creating content, interactive content for kids. In fact, if any of you had ever been to the Museum of Science in Boston, for a very long time, there was this very cool display of, you know, fish in the ocean and, you know, designing your own fish and, you know, sending them out back into the ocean and seeing it interact with all the other fish. That was a creation of his design. And, you know, he was very excited about the results that we had achieved in some of our first deployments. And he and I set aside 2 years to say, well, can we repeat this? You know, so we had sites in Uganda, in South Africa, in Ethiopia, in India. And time again, we saw these kids who are not spending a great deal of their life on devices, kids who don't have access to school, kids who don't have books in the home, interacting with apps and just learning, you know, their brains just exploding exponentially. And so that's when we decided to leave the university and start Curious Learning. It's a US-based nonprofit, but we operate all over the world and we have colleagues all over the world. And we focus on creating open source content that is designed to teach kids to learn to read. And that content is, I can go into more detail about what that content looks like, but it's a very much a part of our mantra that content should be in the languages that kids know best, ideally, and that everything that we create is open source or Creative Commons and available for translation, adaptation, use at no cost to those who need it most.
That's just fascinating, and such an important work you are doing with colleagues and globally. Alan, should we hand over to you because you are our maestro?
I'm just grabbing the links. I think it'd be really good maybe for Stephanie to share a little bit. I know you might be able to demo like what evolution. Yeah. I don't know if Chrissy, you want to first give a share first to show people what Together looks like in its first iteration, or if you want me to bring it up.
Share the link to the book, or
yeah, no, I shared the link, but maybe if you can actually show it so people can see the beautiful.
Show it. So share my screen.
Yeah.
Share my screen. Right. Let me.
Yeah.
See where that is. Okay, so you can find the book on the Zenodo platform or via GoGN, where it's also available. Let me see if I can share my screen. Share screen. Right. One second.
Fine. Yeah. So I think it's worth seeing to appreciate what we're talking about here. Especially because, you know, as you've heard, like it's like a good stories go. It doesn't look very complex when you read it, but there's much behind it, and when you get to hear our colleagues talk about it, it really makes a difference.
It doesn't come up. I have it open, but it doesn't come up in my.
Okay. That's okay. I'll bring it up. Let me just handle this. Someone just help me out and
This is very
fill the
strange.
space while
Yes,
while
okay. So Alan, yes, so Alan's going to share. Thank you so much. So the book was created in a very simple way, using actually, I think, PowerPoint originally, and we did storyboarding, and we had originally a student illustrator, but last minute that didn't happen, so we needed to be resourceful, and we came up with a plan that Chrissy would create some animals, and Odie would then beautify everything and also use the artifacts details from the Rijksmuseum to create that storyline. So we then had also the support from Brian Mathers, who mentored Odie and myself, because Odie at the time was also a student still in school. He hadn't started his university degree at the time. And we wanted to keep it simple. Now you see they are featuring animals. These are not random animals. We did a survey globally, and we got insights into how these some of the animals link to the values of open education or not. And in the end, we discovered that every animal, like every human being, you have good ones and bad ones. So we didn't want to show that, bees are good and I don't know, dinosaurs are bad or dragons are bad. But what you see here is, yes, the scenes of the book with very minimal text, all 2D, beautifully put together by Odie, and we worked together on this, and I'll hand over to Odie to briefly explain. But what we also did is, I think, Alan, there are some pictures, some pages on there where we show the exhibits from the Rijksmuseum, the origin, to be fully transparent about what we actually did. I think they are in the book. In the book, if you open it and fill the screen,
Yep.
You will see. There they are. Yes.
Yes.
They were just.
And I don't know about you, but like I recognize the imagery of the big tidal waves.
Yes. So here you see the original exhibits from the Rijksmuseum, and from some images we took tiny bits, details only, and they wouldn't be recognizable. But the wave, I think, is probably the one that people can recognize immediately. Hi, Todd. I just see you here in the chat. Okay. Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just be curious for Odie as an artist, like how was it to work with this material and the ideas from this group? Was it an easy process, or did you have a lot of back and forth?
Yeah, well, it was a really fun process in general, I'd say. It's not like it was difficult, but it was a challenge finding the right textures and the right images that sort of matched what we needed them for the best, I think. But although it was a challenge, it was really fun, because then it's seeing what's available and then like enormous catalog at the Rijksmuseum. They got so many artworks and pictures of artifacts and all these sorts of different things that even inspired new ideas for the project. But it was it was really fun going through the process of not only repurposing those, but that back and forth, like you say, of the feedback from the various collaborators on the project.
I think also for the theme is of like dealing with water and sharing is like, it's such a universal one that makes sense. And I'm sure that had a factor going into like, how do you write a story that makes sense to a global audience in different languages and cultures?
Yes, that was a really nice challenge. And I mean, putting a story together that is as condensed as a picture book story is actually harder, I think, than writing a novel that's pages and pages long. So I think we all probably agree that we struggled initially to get it going and find the heart of the story. But I think the river and the water, as you say, Alan, was really fundamental that free flow of information, if you like, of knowledge, of sharing more generally, which is really at the heart of what open education is all about. And it's not about this is mine, this is ours, we should say.
Yeah, and I think some of the ideas, what Stephanie described too, reminds me a lot of another great site that I enjoy, Storyweaver, that many people are familiar with, for the way it enables the translation into so many different languages. Do you want to talk some about what you got in store for together, Stephanie?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And probably the best way for me to do that is to share my screen. And okay, let's see here. Share screen.
We'll like give Stephanie some space because it takes a couple steps to get the screen sharing.
Okay.
And she's right there. All right.
Okay. So this slide is usually a part of a much longer presentation going into the history of curious learning, but I'm just going to hop right into what our content is and what it looks like. So we design for Android devices. Most of our campaigns for downloads are in either sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia. And in those places, people are typically using Android phones. We design all of our apps to be used on low-end devices, so they should be concise. They can't use a great deal of memory. And that's, of course, a big challenge. But we start off every language with our Feed the Monster app. So you can see that little monster guy with the ABC over his head. That app, I could go into detail about that, but in sum, it's an app that's designed to take kids who speak a specific language, but don't know how to read in that language, and introduce them to letter knowledge, and give them an opportunity to play and master what they know about letters and sounds. And depending upon the structure of the language, Feed the Monster also includes words. But we know, of course, that just knowing letters does not make you a reader. And so we strive to make sure that the kids in as many languages as possible also have access to stories, but keeping in mind that these kids live in low literate environments. So, we're not going to be handing out physical books. That's not feasible. And we can't depend on parents or teachers or even older siblings to have the skills that they need to be able to read these books. So that's why we call them interactive stories. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. And what we're looking for is for Together, this amazing story that has this great story behind it, to be a part of our collection. Right now we have these stories, about 10 stories that are in 15 languages. I'm in the process of adding 4 more languages. And then we also have a series of very short games that we use as assessments with some of our deployments. So this just gives you an example of, on the screen, of what one page of an interactive story looks like. And I'm going to actually link to a story in a moment. But in all of our stories, there's some common key features that one of which is self-narration. In other words, it has this read to me function. So the kids can hear a native speaker say the whole sentence in a natural conversational tone. But at the same time, they have the chance to go back and tap on each one of the words and hear that word read individually. And that's a really important part of modeling, early reading practice. So decoding for the kids so that they can start building a knowledge of how the words in their language function on a page. And we also are all the time improving what we call our linked text and graphics or animation. So ideally, the illustration should provide some type of support for meaning. So when you see a particular area of the screen light up, that is linking the word, say, for instance, in this case, the name Ayanda, to the person on the screen, and would link, likes to read to the object on the page. Okay, so in this case, a book. So let me see if I can actually go over into a link here and make sure. Let's see. Probably need to stop, maybe stop sharing and go to a different. Oh no, I can share this tab instead. Okay, here we go. So this is an example of one of our stories in French, and it's called Friends. And this is about to be released to a bunch of kids in the Republic of Congo in Brazzaville. And so if I
Je m'appelle Simo.
Then you turn the page and it automatically reads the sentence. But I can go back and I can
Je
on any one of the words,
m'appelle
and it reads just that individual word.
Simo.
And then if that word corresponds to something in illustration, that part of the illustration is highlighted. In order to keep our apps, like I mentioned before, very small, we've started out with a version that doesn't have a lot of animation, but we're working on adding more actual animation rather just highlighting the screen.
J'ai 4 amis.
So we can see here that Simo, he has 4 friends. Not that I speak French, but I just happen to know the text of the story really well. Again, they can go back and they can click on any one of the words, and that's read to them.
Amis.
And then all of those objects on the page that correspond to the word are highlighted. So I won't take up a ton of time by going through each and every page, but this is just one of our stories that we want to share with the world, and but also give an example of what we plan on doing with together. So each page will have an illustration. We have what we call a trigger, where a particular part of the story highlights a particular part of the illustration. And that the story would be read to the children, and that this would have this clickable word by word reading, and that we would translate it to all of the up to 20 languages that we will soon have available, and ideally to all 60 languages that we have available to kids around the world.
This is just amazing what you just showed, and I have a question, Stephanie, if that's okay. How do you source the story? So we came to you obviously with the story that we had. How do you normally go about, or more usually?
Yep. So most of our stories, or all of the stories that we have out right now, either come from 2 different sources, either the African Storybook Project or the Global Digital Library. Global Digital Library sources most of their books also from either the African Storybook Project or from Pratham Books, Storyweaver Books in India. And they have some books that they've created in collaboration with partnerships, as do we. So we recently completed a batch of books with a group in Ethiopia called ICOG. And so all of those stories were created by the Ethiopian groups and were written by native speakers of the 7 different languages that we'll have in Ethiopia. But that kind of a collaboration allows us to now take these books, and now we can translate them to all the languages that we want to share them around the world.
Thank you.
I couldn't help but notice. I couldn't help but noticing that these are running in H5P, which is one of my favorite interactive
That's right.
platforms. Not to get techie, but it's good to see that. I think you mentioned that it's designed to be is it low bandwidth, or can it be run completely offline?
It can be run completely offline. So obviously we would love it if, the more often our users get online, the more data we get. That's something I haven't really touched on, is the fact that these books, their use in the field allows us to learn a lot about the kids, which books that they like and visit once or twice or 10 times, which books they don't seem to like very much, how often they're actually tapping on individual words, or are they just going through the book, page by page. But they can run completely offline. So once they've been downloaded, then they don't need to be online for the books to run.
I really like that the model you're using for collaboration is really partnership, and it's not like, here we are doing it for you. So that's really, really important.
In fact, if I could interrupt for 1 second, it's very helpful that you say that, because that goes in neatly into another project that we're working on with the Global Digital Library, in which we are trying to create a very highly usable web-based tool that would allow anybody all over the world to create basically a storybook, an interactive storybook that would be downloaded into our collection as an app. It would be no more difficult to use than, let's say, well, hopefully easier to use than PowerPoint. And it would add this interactivity, would add audio, and then animation to any of the stories that they create. And we're about 3 months away from opening that tool up to a wider audience.
Oh, we can't wait to see that. I'll hand over to Verena. I think she wants to add something, because she experimenting after the project, isn't it, with her own students on creating stories.
That's exactly the direction I was thinking, Chrissy. And the first question is, I know that in Together we have, I'm just curious, we have some sounds. So they're not really words. Well, they are words.
Yeah.
They're words of sound. How does that work?
Sure.
That was the first question. And then I have another question about what you were saying, the students.
Okay. So for your first question, we haven't really had kind of background sounds in any of our stories yet. So my best guess is that at this stage, we're just recording them as if I were reading to a child, where I say help or whoosh. But we, this book, and it's always very cool to see how every book kind of presents us with an interesting technical challenge to figure out, well, how could we make this tool do more and still stay within our need to be, low memory usage and to be able to function offline. But, this is something that we could add to that, that we could have like the sound of a wave coming through. And, that's something that we're experimenting. Maybe it won't come out with the first version of the story, but it would come out with, say, a second version of the story.
Yeah, no, so in connection to that, when my students were writing the books, and I think this is so exciting that you're giving them the option, because the problem that I have as the instructor is that I'm the one responsible for helping them create the books or their stories. So we started with a storyboard, and we used a lot of, we used the whole design that Chrissy and our team did. I use the same design when I'm teaching them how to create their own stories. But the first thing is many of them have lost that creative inspiration, that piece, that ability to write a story for themselves. And so this is why it's so important to me that you're creating this, because if nothing else, we're bringing story back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So are you thinking I can see the PowerPoint slide and then the setup and everything, but there's even the moment of bringing back like why story is important, because I saw that you went to the literacy piece, which is also really important. I should do more of, but it was the story piece, like why story is important. Are you going to be making some resources to support that, or which direction are you going when you're thinking of
Sure. Well, as someone who has spent, 25 years focusing on helping kids learn to read, I cannot agree with you more that story language, oral language, is the core of what we are trying to share with kids, which is one of the reasons why it was so important for us to have this content not just be in English or French or Portuguese, but to, as best as possible, be in the languages that the kids know best. So they enter into the learn to read phase of their life, but bringing with them everything that they know about their language. They know stories, they know sounds of their language, they know the meanings of words. And yet at the same time, stories offer something else. They offer an emotional connection to language. They expose them to language structures that you tend not to, sentence types that you tend not to hear every day. And it is the true engagement piece. I mean, all of us as teachers struggle with, how do we keep kids engaged in learning? What kind of antics do I have to get into today to make sure that the kids want to be here and are ideally, they don't even know they're learning. They're just doing something that they think is fun. And story is the core of that. This read to me function to me was so important because, we know that these kids, even before if they were going to, let's say you've got an older sibling playing Feed the Monster. Well, but there's a 3-year-old in the home that's not ready to learn letters. And that 3-year-old is, going to be just as excited by what their older brother or sister is doing and is going to want to push on the other buttons. And now all of a sudden you've got a family sitting around listening to a story in their language. We know from past deployments that we've got parents, poking in there and going, what's that word again? And being a part of the storytelling process. And so the more then that we can make that part of stories that come from their own environment, imagine a story coming out of Ethiopia, going all over Ethiopia. And great, they have that shared cultural experience, but that same story could be translated into Hausa and shared in Nigeria. And now maybe you've got a parent that says, oh yeah, I remember, when I was a kid, we had a story that was kind of like that, but here, let me tell it was a little bit different. And so that shared experience to me gives the why of why would anyone want to become literate. It's not, it's not necessarily so that you can read a letter from, the government or read a newspaper. It's to read stories. And yet the more engaged they are, the more they like the stories. And to me, stories are also, could also be nonfiction. A good nonfiction is told like a story. And the more they're engaged, the more likely they are to, first of all, become good readers. And the more likely they are to want to keep reading for the rest of their life. So the stories are it. They're the essence of it.
Yeah, we are all natural storytellers, isn't it? We do that all our life, but when it comes to learning, we seem to forget it and don't use storytelling and story making as much as we should, perhaps, to bring out that curiosity, the imagination, but also that connection, I think, to ourselves, to others, and the world, I think, around us as well.
When you raise, Verena, the challenge of your students being able to create stories, I imagined the giant demon monster in the background named AI. So I don't want to bring that into this, but I think so much that like the simple impact.
Can we maybe just pause that, Ellen? I appreciate that, but I think that what Chrissy was saying now is how do we do this, right? And there were certain things that she was speaking about, how do we make this an organic thing and not just sort of outsource it to AI, which is sort of how that would flow across that conversation. But I think that middle piece there, we still need to be involved. You're not shipping all of this out to AI. We couldn't ship out or have AI create what was communally created. It was completely unique. So now we're looking for iterations of that, and we're looking at how do we make different sort of vehicles for that. But yeah, I don't think AI is the death of creativity unless we stop being creative.
Yeah, completely. Maybe for the folks who you've been part of this and seeing what Stephanie has showed in this new iteration, what's sort of your feeling about and vision for what Together might become in this new format?
Is that a question for me?
For anybody,
Okay.
Can I say something?
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, listen. So my connectivity has been really awful. So the future for Together, I think, is, from my experience here with the Open Ed influencers at Nelson Mandela University. Even today, I was trying to just have a retrospective, and what I saw were people and the efforts that were engaged, developed, facilitated, like really, people got on top of things that they have never done before in order to do things with open education. As open education influences here at Nelson Mandela University. When I saw the amount of translations that they went out as human and not AI, because there was a context. I could show you like versions of a single word, like look. Look is a big word in the story. And when you see it going across like 13 different languages, 7 of which are in Africa, and you see the variation in there. And it's remarkable. And these were all done by students. So I still say, let's not leave the student or the human element in there. Let humans go out there and get the original story feedback into AI. That's going to go there anyway. But I think like just the authenticity is something that we have to share.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
interesting that you say that, Gino, because just today I got a translation back for a completely different, for our kind of core first set of 10 stories in Punjabi. And, the translator made a note to say, well, I hope you don't mind, but I adjusted some of the wording of the story to make it sound more natural in Punjabi. And,
I don't hate it. I just don't. Yeah.
And she brought up the fact that, this kind of stuff happens all the time, that, the name in one of our stories is one that was, I think, originally written in Swahili, and it used the name of the little boy was Chaku. And apparently in Punjabi, Chaku means knife. So it might not be the greatest name to have for the child. We might be able to find something else. But the fact that, I get excited whenever we have just discussions about a word. If you have people sitting around and talking about, Chaco, or, the number of times that in our game, Feed the Monster, we've had to come up with maybe an alternative title for the story, because, this word monster that's evolved maybe in, Europe or the US to mean that could be something friendly because of Sesame Street and Monsters, Inc. But in a lot of parts of the world, there's no translation for the idea of a monster that's somehow friendly. So, to me, this underscores the value of having these open resources, that it promotes these discussions. And we don't care if the game is called Feed Your Friend or Feed the Monster or whatever. But I love that we're thinking about the words and talking about the words, and that we can make those changes based on cultural needs.
I love that. Ellen, I saw you laughing. So I'm going to ask, okay, so Stephanie, I really love like this, the concept, the idea that you're going for. But my question now is like, to be open, it would have to enable some sort of a malleability of the story. So right now, Together says something from page 1 until how many pages are we on here, people? Odie?
I think we have 12.
Yeah, about 12 as the actual story, right? So if we, hi Odie, sorry. If we're speaking about then using this and making it something that, that more people can use and getting the story out there, the story shouldn't go necessarily from page 1 until page 12. We should be able to then, instead of just making words, like which are kind of surface level edits. Chrissy, I see your hand, and we'll get to you. But yeah, those are like surface level things, right? So you speaking about curious learning, and I want to know, can curious learning then help me to reinterpret or interpret, not reinterpret, interpret, or, look at open education. Just be able to then bring in my own artifacts, so my own, that's the PhD level, right?
Yeah.
But for now, can I take page 7 and put that first with my words? And then page 1, Chrissy's page 1. Go, Chrissy.
I love you. You know that. We can do this already. We can do this already because we have Doodle Fun. Doodle Fun is the software, the open access software that Thanasis Frank has developed when he was 15. And we have all the scenes in that software, and anybody accessing it, and we can share the link, can then
Listen, I feel like it needs to be
retell
like a
their
banner
own
coming
story.
across here right now.
So that's one thing. But secondly, what we have done with Stephanie, because when I shared the text, the whole book with Stephanie and all the resources we have, we needed to make some edits. Because we talked a lot about sounds, what Verena mentioned earlier, and things that we don't explicitly mention on the page and communicate more through pictures. But since the books that Stephanie and colleagues in Curious Learning are creating is more about the developing reading capabilities, we needed to add something. So when you see the version that's going to be published, going to be out as an interactive book, you will already notice some differences. But because the book is openly available, anybody can take the pictures, can take the text, and as you say, remix and completely change the order, add things. I mean, we had done something like that, Paula, isn't it?
Yes.
Again, during the pandemic, after the book was published, we organized a global jam. Wasn't it, Paula? You were part of
Yes.
it. Would you like briefly to say what we did then?
Yes, we had groups of students actually participating.
Tino, you were part of this as well.
Yes, yes.
I just remember.
To remix the resources that we've created and shared together with people playing with it, actually really playing with it and changing the text, adapting it to their own languages, but also changing the story somehow. Am I right, Chrissy? Because some of them decided to tweak it a bit and use the language as their playground mainly, but sometimes also change the background slightly. So, or changing the colors, like putting together a story with different characters somehow by interacting with the images of the characters of the story itself. It was fun. I remember that as a nice experience.
Call on Gino. He's raising his hand.
And back to you, Stephanie. So, when you take on together onto this platform, just share with us what the functionality is that's going to come along with being hosted on the platform. I think that's something we haven't gotten to, like, really, like we're just all being curious learners.
Sure. So I think we're talking about kind of two different things. I mean, on the one hand, we're going to have this web-based tool that would allow anybody on the planet to create an interactive story like the one I showed you, and then to, push a button and have that story published, meaning available within our umbrella app called Curious Reader. So that, lends itself to what you described, Gino, in terms of being able to adapt a story. An adaptation could be a straight translation, or it could be that the story gets shuffled around, or it could be that someone has, images coming from, a museum in India and starts, popping in those images instead of from the Rijksmuseum. But then the functionality of the story being published now makes it available to the kids. That is not an environment that allows for the story to be moved around or changed, but allows us to gain a greater understanding of, how the kids use books. So, one of the things I haven't mentioned is, our distribution. Since we first released, we have 4 stories that we created together with the group Ubongo in Tanzania. Those were actually created in Unity, so they're downloadable as kind of separate apps, as opposed to being within this, container app. And they've been out now since before COVID. And since then, I meant to have those statistics at my fingertips, but they've been downloaded over 100,000 times. We have what we call well over 1.5 million events. And what that means is an event is when the book is opened and read. We have within
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's amazing. We have within the millions of tapping, kids tapping on the words. One of the stories is a story where it has kind of a choose your own adventure function. So we get there to see, do kids rather go to the ocean, or do they want to go to the mountains, or do they want to go into the city? And that's, that's just a snippet. We're also trying to understand the relationship between this Learn to Read app and the books, like which one feeds the other. We know that kids who are what we call highly engaged users of the books are also highly engaged users of Feed the Monster, but we don't quite understand, which is the cart and which is the horse. But, the more we are collecting data in different languages, the more we can also start looking at cultural differences. Are there places in the world where some kids love this story that we have about, a bear and colors, and in other places they really like, the story a lot.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Alan, I can see you moving.
Oh, I'm just getting my rhythm up, Gina. No, I just again thinking, I'm not. I was just looking around to see, because I found the repository for the container app, but the fact that I think these are packaged in H5P, if you access that on the web, the virtue of H5P is there's a version to download it and remix, just as you described, Gino. You could take it and edit it in something like Lumi, which is a free editor, and move the pages around and start changing.
That's right.
So I don't know if that's going to be part of the distribution, Stephanie.
Well, I mean, it will be a part of the distribution in the sense that, we have a GitHub repository. Everything we make ends up in the GitHub repository. And, with particular groups, we share that information, because obviously there are other groups that don't care that they, a lot of people just want our content to use our content. And then there are other groups who want to know this information about being able to adapt it on their own. So, an example of that is the Australian Literacy and Numeracy Foundation. We weren't involved in this effort at all, but they took the Feed the Monster app and some of the stories, and they are using it in their organization that is preserving Aboriginal languages. So Feed the Monster is in 2 Aboriginal languages, and they did that work completely on their own, just like creating a branch from the GitHub repository. So, there are certainly organizations that care about the GitHub branch and the fact that they can, download the content and do what you described, Gino. I have to admit, that's not really my area.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw a spanner in the wheel.
Yeah, when I use terms or words like H5P, I just I've heard that term used before. I know my team is using H5P.
A good story needs a little bit of tension so we can, work it out and come to the ending where everything comes together. This has really been exciting. What sort of is when can we expect to see something about?
So I have the English recordings for together. I'm just working my way through those recordings. And then I would expect within a month, we would see, the version that would be at least in US English out on the Curious Reader app. And then I'll be working on translating it to a bunch of other languages.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for all the work you are doing. Can I ask a quick question? Because we talked a lot about written language, but in picture books, there's also visual language. So how do you source the images that you use? How do you work with designers, illustrators, makers?
Well, that's the value of working with, say, Global Digital Library or African Storybook Project. We can take their static images and we can carve out pieces for animation. So in those stories, we're not creating the illustrations, but those groups have already done that work. And that would also be true with, say, our partners in Ethiopia, ICOG. They worked with local designers, local artists to create those books on their own. And then what we do is we just create this interactive version, and then we work to distribute the story.
Great, thank you. That's really useful, isn't it? Because we work, all of us, in universities, and it may be that we could get funding for projects like this to enable, the co-creation again of further stories that could then become interactive books, among others, and obviously, Gino, many other outputs as well.
That would be fantastic because, for these kids to become good readers, they need to read a lot. Yes. And that means it's incumbent upon us to create things that these kids want to read. And so the more people who are involved in that process, the more likely it is that I think that we're creating something really exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say, is it? Because I think we shouldn't be creating the things that kids want to read. We should be helping them to read the things they want to read.
Yes. I agree with you 100%.
And tell their own stories, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought together would be.
So could we discuss maybe, because I see there is an appetite here to take this further, isn't it, of the opportunity maybe that we may all have to think about how we can engage young readers, children, in the co-creation of picture books.
Now, how about handover? How about just a handover?
Hand over to them without us?
Be involved? How about handing it over and saying, "Yeah, do this."
Yeah.
Okay, that can work. That can work for some.
Centering ourselves.
I think that could work for some, but I think some scaffolding will be needed. I would argue.
Oh,
I love it, Chrissy.
This is the ongoing story, and I just have to
together doesn't mean all of us in the same.
No, it doesn't mean, and it doesn't mean, and it shouldn't
we
mean.
Do things together, Odie.
Like a family.
Odie, over to you.
Oh, well, I just want to thank you all for taking the time to be here. Yeah, and just looking forward, and keep us posted and let us know when this new version is out, and we definitely look forward to talking more about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thank you for including me in obviously tight-knit family.
Well, you know how families operate. There's
exactly.
Right.
They're throwing food at the table, But,
but we all love each other. We all love each other.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. So we'll end some music as the live stream goes out. Oh, and here we go, saying goodbye together.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so